Two children, Nathan and Abigail, are sitting in the back seat of their parents' car when they notice a full moon outside. Watching it and thinking about the reasons for it not moving feels much better for them than listening to their parents' conversation. The two in front are just staring at each other with bitterness and resentment. It all feels as if they are just fighting to fight. There is no apparent problem to be solved. They just want to be at each other's throats. Fast forward to the far future. Abigail is already a grown woman, divorced with a witty and humorous individual and the mother of two incredibly energetic and smart kids. Sometimes these two traits work against Abigail because it is almost impossible to win an argument against them, but they are still great. Abigail is a fixer. Piles and piles of things to take care of and straighten out are presenting themselves to her every day, and the woman simply fails to let herself have a breather. It is one ordinary morning when her mother, Barbara, gives her a call and lets her know about her father's current condition. The man seems to have fallen again. Additionally, he almost drowned at one of his pool sessions lately. As scary and frustrating as all of this sounds for Abigail, however, Barbara doesn't seem to care at all. As if she were speaking about a sudden shift in weather, she casually explains the details to her daughter. The two are as opposite of each other as a murder hornet and a fly. When Abigail runs to her father's help, we learn that the man has become a lovely individual. The last time we heard him, he was spitting insults, but now he's a smiling, settled, and calm man. Barbara must have tamed him well. He is still lying on the ground when Abigail enters the house. His body seems to have been fading away, and he seems to be truly struggling. His wife, however, doesn't seem to pay any heed to this fact. Being a very good man, however, Eugene protects her against Abigail's bitter tongue. According to the old man, Barbara is the best wife anybody could have. Once Nathan's name is mentioned in their conversation, interesting things unfold. As it turns out, the young man has cut himself off from the family. He hasn't spoken to any one of them in years. Barbara is particularly angry about it, but Eugene seems to be wishing for him to come back. The rest of the day passes ordinarily as always, until the next morning, when we see the first glimpse of real life in Abigail's eyes. After preparing breakfast as always, and after engaging in an already lost back and forth with her children, a young man enters her house through the back door. His name is Jay, and as it turns out, he is working in her garden. He needs a remote control for the garage, but instead, he gets one confused girl and a lot of blushing. Once eventually, the remote is found and given to the worker, the boys pick on their mother immediately. They catch her reaction perfectly well, but before they can fully get on with the picking process, their father comes home and takes them to the zoo. It is obvious now, Peter, that their father has been spoiling them and getting their love because of it. By letting them get away with everything, he makes himself much more likable than Abigail. This is why the boys get out of the house without eating breakfast. Actually, it mustn't be that bad. They have already eaten enough of their mother's patience this morning. Speaking of their mother's patience, Barbara calls Abigail up very soon and lets her know that another one of Eugene's carers must be fired. The reason for this is quite hilarious. The young carer seems to have been giving Eugene some medical marijuana for his condition. Barbara lived through the 1960s, so naturally, the word marijuana strikes up all sorts of crazy memories in her brain. She just won't acknowledge the fact that CBD might be used for medical reasons. She is already throwing the gummy bears at the young man's face when Abigail comes home to this mess. Unfortunately, there is simply no chance that she will turn this around. She will have to find another carer for Eugene, the lovely, tamed, and broken man who can no longer even hold his pee. It is at this point in the story that we get a little deeper glimpse into Abigail's childhood. As it turns out, her brother always used to be the one causing trouble, but it was always Abigail getting a slap from Eugene. The old man seems not to have been such a nice individual in the past. In the next scene, Barbara and Eugene are discussing her being stuck in her career as a doctor, examining Eugene in front of them. As he points out afterward, nothing can be done to make his condition any better. The family must consider hiring a full-time caregiver. Naturally, Barbara needs a third opinion. That night, Barbara decides to cool off. Drinking some wine, she listens to a motivational video and, in this partially insane condition, calls up her boss. Fortunately enough, she is sent to voicemail, but all the things she puts inside the voicemail are enough to get her fired. After conveying all the nitty-gritty details of her life at full length, she just goes to sleep. Not the greatest memory appears in her mind then. The memory contains everything that is wrong about Abigail's parents. Not appreciating their daughter, who's always there and helping. Appreciating the hell out of her brother, who is left. Alcohol and marijuana, and fighting with each other like a couple of stray dogs. If walking like a hungry vampire is to be considered lively and healthy, Abigail is the liveliest and healthiest individual the next morning. The family takes Eugene to another one of his appointments then. Abigail immediately feels a little lighter and better after seeing her mother struggle to carry Eugene. In the next scene, Barbara, who's been stalking Peter on Facebook, is telling her daughter to start dating again when the doctor tells Eugene to try and walk on his own. Soon, the doctor tells the daughter and the mother about her conclusion, and the conclusion is extremely dark and heavy to take. As it turns out, Eugene's condition is soon going to start declining rapidly. From her point of view, it is already time to consider hospice. The old man has no more than 6 more months to live. The news strikes hard for Abigail. As tears come to her face, she listens to her mother as she immerses herself in the most rigorous attempt at denial. But for better or for worse, Abigail doesn't let her do that. The reality of the situation is cruel, but avoiding acknowledging it will surely take them down a darker path. On the way home, Eugene remembers Nathan again. In his head, the memories he had with his son are beautiful and more meaningful than anything. That evening, the old couple danced this terrible news away. Meanwhile, the thoughts about Nathan are roaming in Abigail's mind so much that the next morning she decides to send him a text message. She wants him to call her. It is just before she sends it out that yet another memory comes into her mind. This time, she is sitting at a breakfast table in her parents' house, reading them a letter sent from Nathan. As the letter says, the parents are not allowed to come to his birthday party unless they promise to apologize to his wife for something. The parents are enraged about this, of course. There is no way they sink so low and apologize to that lousy individual in order to go to that stupid party. Well, they don't seem to be the kind of individuals who hold on to their words so much, so it is not that surprising to see them at the party in the next scene. Naturally, their main objective here is to make this celebration as miserable as possible. Abigail says hello wholeheartedly and warmly, but Barbara and Eugene act as terribly as possible. Barbara tells Nathan's wife that she has put on some weight, and Eugene just walks away without even looking at his son. What a delight to have such a nice family. Unusually enough, Nathan calls back immediately after getting Abigail's text message. He takes the news pretty well, and the truth about his future plans slips out of his mouth. He regrets it a bit afterward, but he still tells Abigail that he is coming to town in a few weeks to give a lecture at a local university. He's not making any commitments, but if the timing's right, he might actually be able to drop by and say hello to Dad. Abigail is out of her mind from happiness when she hears this. It feels as if a large amount of weight has just been lifted off of her shoulders, and the relief is so great that she gets an urge to get closer to her brother. This is why she expresses her will to attend his lecture when he comes to town. Nathan is understandably taken aback. It takes a little time until he says yes and promises to send her all the information about it. But by then, Abigail is already thinking that she made a mistake. Still, this might be the beginning of something new and great. The memory of the way Nathan left his parents' house bubbles up inside Abigail's brain after the call. The authoritarian father and his wife, who's been protecting Eugene's crooked ways for her entire life, are, of course, reacting terribly to the young man's decision. There are examples of threats of physical aggression, screaming, and cruel back and forth. At one moment, Eugene even hurts Abigail by shoving her out of his way. The amount of crooked power this man holds in his household, especially over the women of the family, is truly disturbing to watch. Coming back to the present time, Abigail and Jay have another interaction at noon. The interaction is only about taking out the trash and filling out a water bottle. But the screaming connection and chemistry between them fill this ordinary subject of conversation with fireworks and colorful explosions. It is extremely obvious that they both like each other. Unfortunately enough, Barbara calls when Jay is with Abigail, so the relationship is almost wrecked even before the beginning. But thankfully, Jay engages in an interaction with Barbara with a fair bit of irony and a kind heart. He doesn't take it very seriously. After this is all done and he heads out to work, Abigail suddenly stops him. She tells him all about the lecture tomorrow and points out that her brother is reading about Japanese gardening culture during the Meiji period. Jay is a landscaper, so it might actually be interesting for him to come. Plus, Abigail has an extra ticket. The man is delighted to embrace this offer. He even offered to go eat sushi before the lecture. At this point in the story, another memory is shown. Here, Abigail and Nathan are woken up by Barbara in the middle of the night to send them away to their aunts. As it turns out, their father has become a little too aggressive and dangerous, and the mother thinks that it would be best if the kids were safe. During the drive, she is protecting Eugene, of course, saying that he is just stressed out from work, and the kids have no idea what to think. It is in those kinds of hard moments that Abigail seeks safety and comfort on Nathan's shoulder. He seems to have always been a harbor of peace for the little girl. Weirdly enough, this is not the kind of memory that bubbles up inside Abigail when she first lays her eyes upon her brother the next day and hears him talk. The memory that comes to mind depicts the young man urging his sister to follow in his footsteps and just leave their parents' house. Unfortunately, since his girlfriend is telling him to come inside, he simply cuts the conversation with Abigail short. Nathan seeks distance and avoids eye contact during their meeting after the lecture. Still, the two give each other a shy embrace and go outside to talk about Eugene's condition. As expected, the young man first points out that he's not generally curious about his parents. They have hurt him enough, and he made the choice to cut them off from his life a long time ago. But if Abigail needs to express it to somebody meaningful to her, he is ready to listen. And so he gets to hear as Abigail goes on about how it has been since he left. The undiagnosed borderline mother and the diagnosed bipolar father have been struggling to live well until Eugene's current condition came into the picture. This condition will surely be Eugene's last, so if any part of Nathan still wants to see him, now would be the time. Unfortunately, Nathan says no. Unusually enough, it is mainly because of Barbara and not Eugene. A question arises in Abigail's mind at this moment, a question that harbors a lot of hope, and the question is this: what if Barbara wasn't there? Would Nathan consider seeing his father then? The answer is yes, but now the hard part comes. Abigail has to arrange everything so that Barbara either doesn't find out about Nathan's visit or is okay with it. And it is all so complicated that she just has to let it all out and talk about this struggle with somebody. Naturally, this somebody is Jay. And the man who's been fixing for a living for a very long time gives her the most heartwarming and hope-breaking food for thought. No matter how much she tries to fix everything, things will keep breaking. What a delightful thing to hear at the beginning of a complete emotional breakdown. The two lean for a kiss then, but as always, fate decides that this is exactly the moment when Barbara must call. Even worse, this is the moment when Barbara must invite Jay and all his family to Eugene's birthday party next week. Thankfully enough, the young man declines the offer politely. But perhaps he is even going to come. Perhaps finally, someone likes Abigail so much that they are not going to care about her dysfunctional family. The girl is clearly seeing a glimpse of this in Jay. There is no wonder the kiss feels extremely relieving and satisfying. In the next scene, Abigail gives herself great motivational self-talk in front of Jay and his parents, before entering the Mordor of birthday parties. Out of the bat, it is obvious that the following hour is going to be filled with countless uncomfortable questions and conversations. Jay has two mothers. He seems to have been brought up in a lesbian household. Barbara is drunk, and Peter and their two kids are here too. Contrary to our expectations, however, it starts out as being sad. Immediately after blowing out the candles and receiving a cheering ovation, the old man expresses just how much he wishes Nathan to be here too. Silence follows, and Barbara decides that this is not how everything is going to go. She wants fun, and she will get fun at any cost. Cutting a piece of cake for her husband, she tries to jam a spoonful of it inside his mouth, even though Eugene clearly doesn't want to have it. The silence becomes increasingly uncomfortable, and the family members around the table start telling Barbara to stop. The carer steps in as well and receives nothing but terrible aggression from the drunk woman. Chaos unfolds. Peter takes the kids outside, and Jay decides to call a cab as well. Embarrassed out of her mind, Abigail Faye stands and watches as the man and his parents leave. This is the moment when we expect an explosion from Abigail. It would actually make a lot of sense if she would just lash out and start screaming at her mother at this moment. But Abigail is not an ordinary human anymore. After holding it in for so long, she has already mutated into a bag full of unexpressed emotions. One more wouldn't hurt. Eugene is taken away for a nap, and Barbara is left alone at the table, dreaming about how her husband's last birthday should have been. The nap is far better for Eugene than any cake, and it is not because he needs so much rest. It is because his daughter is such an incredible individual that she finds it in herself to sing a lullaby to her father after everything that happened today. This scene is particularly interesting in light of the memory that comes next. Eugene and Abigail are sitting down together when the man shares his will to move to the city and leave the family. He says that there is no love or energy for him here. His wife is always picking fights with him, and his son never talks to him. It is just disturbing to watch how Eugene completely forgets about his daughter. Abigail has expressed enough love towards him, but unfortunately enough, the man has never accepted it from her. However kind, Abigail still wants, at least on a subconscious level, to get back with her mother, of course. This must be why, after singing the lullaby, she goes up to Barbara and tells her about her meeting with Nathan. At first, Barbara is past the moon with happiness that her son is finally coming back to say hello, but then she learns about the other part of the story. Nathan doesn't want her to be there when he comes. The news is hard for Barbara to take. The pain is painted on her face, but collecting her emotions, the woman pushes it down and swallows her bitterness. She will not stand in Nathan's way. She will not be there. The consequences of her drunken voicemail to her boss came up to Abigail then. The woman tells her to take some time off. And if this is not enough for her, Jay sends her a tough voicemail as well, in which he explains that they should hit pause for some time. After what happened at the birthday, he is no longer so sure he wants to move forward in their relationship. Because of her dysfunctional family, and because of the ways she has chosen to deal with her family problems, other people are starting to cut Abigail off from their lives. Tomorrow comes quickly, and in the next scene, Nathan is standing in front of his father's room, full of anxiety. This is the moment. After 20 years, he is going to meet the man who abandoned his family for as long as he can remember. On the other end of the door, Eugene is anxious as well. His anxiousness is a little different, though. His heart is racing because he is about to see the person he's been dreaming of seeing lately. Once the step is taken and the slow greetings are over, Abigail says that she will leave the two alone, but in unison, Nathan and Eugene beg her to stay. They need somebody to fill the gap between them. They crave a linking figure, and nobody else can play that role. The meeting continues delightfully. Nathan remembers the good memories Eugene has given him and tells him the thing he wants to hear most. Being the nicest son on the planet, he points out that everything good about him stems from Eugene. The old man is over the moon with happiness, but Nathan struggles to get by after this. Tears come to his face when he finds himself in a situation where he has to tell Eugene that this is probably the last time he is ever going to see him. An incredible amount of pain is painted on the old man's face when he hears this, but a happy family photo is still taken. Barbara is emotionally distant in the next scene when she returns home. Understandably enough, today has not been so easy for her. Later that day, Abigail is sitting with his father, reading a book, when suddenly, the old man starts talking about the things he sees when he closes his eyes. This has started just recently, pictures and scenarios that come to him abruptly after he finds himself in the world of darkness. He sees Abigail's boys, and he sees Barbara when she was young. Out of the bat, Abigail realizes that an extremely meaningful monologue is about to be heard. So slowly and silently, she calls Barbara to come inside and listen too. Eugene expresses how meaningful Barbara has been for him, how mind-blowingly beautiful she was when he first met her, and how he used to feel when seeing her bright face. He has never even imagined accomplishing something without her by his side, but now he will have to perish without her. He just wants to be with her forever. After passing, he wants to hold her hands through the whole of eternity. His eyes are closed as he says all this, so he has no idea that Barbara is hearing his words. It's good that he has no idea though. If he knew she was there, he wouldn't have said any of it. Abigail needs a warm embrace after this moment, but what he gets is something much more meaningful. Eugene's carer, Darren, tells her the 5 words she has always wanted to hear. He lets her know that she's been a great daughter. Barbara joins the embrace as well. In the next scene, the old man asks about Nathan once more, and this time, Abigail just tells him. There is nothing Eugene can do about it. All he can do is draw a deep line. It looks easy at first, but neither saying no, nor letting her father go, is easy for Abigail. She needs Nathan as well. She needs a shoulder that holds peace and a sense of security, but, for better or for worse, all she can depend on throughout this season of her life is herself. In the next scene, the girl does the hardest thing. Going up to her father, she says goodbye to him. In this moment of grief and pain, she says farewell like a champion. In a few minutes, she is sitting in a car with Jay to fetch some morphine for Eugene when she receives the fateful call. Eugene is no longer alive. Barbara is still partially in denial when Jay and Abigail get back home, but finally she manages to let her husband go as well. A huge transition has just occurred in Abigail's life, but unfortunately, nothing has changed in terms of her status in her family. She is still a fixer, and she is still invisible. The funeral passes without any major incident. Nathan is sitting in his car, struggling to come out and join the others, when a memory pops out from the depths of his consciousness. There, the siblings are getting ready for a party when their parents decide to get goofy. The memory holds a lot of simple happiness, and it is a testimony to how very little can be so much. The fact that nothing has changed soon forces Abigail to step up. After the funeral, Barbara is gossiping about the people who came, and her daughter decides to confront her about it. This is when this one disagreement grows into something enormous. Very soon, all the bitterness and unexpressed thoughts come rushing from Abigail's mouth. She has never had enough room to take care of herself. Throughout her entire life, she has been dragged back inside her family to take care of every single problem, and even now, this sacrifice of hers is not appreciated. In the end, Barbara just tells her to go follow her brother and leave, and perhaps she should. Even more, perhaps she should have done it a long time ago. That evening, Abigail drives to Nathan's house, knocks on his door, and remembers all the times she came up to him for help. This one memory tells the story of her walking up to Nathan's room after Barbara refused to feed her because she was not such a good girl that day. Nathan gave her a helping hand back then. They were truly a good duo. The bitterness in Abigail's heart is so poisonous that she immediately starts scolding Nathan for not being at the funeral today. And to be alone at the funeral is nothing compared to the lifetime of struggle she had to endure alone. Nathan never reached out for help, and he should feel guilty for it. The young man, however, has no intention to feel guilty for getting himself free of the shackles of his dysfunctional family. If anything, he did the right thing for himself, and the fact that her sister couldn't do that isn't his fault. Abigail sacrificed herself, and she chose to do so. She was, and still is, sick from all the childhood traumas they had to endure, but Abigail knows that Nathan is as sick as her. He might present himself as a collected and well-settled man, but deep down, his sister knows how much he's still suffering. As time flies by, Abigail finally manages to get a cover at the magazine she works at. As her relationship with Jay matures and grows, she gradually starts to learn how to stand her ground and value herself. The hold that Barbara used to have on her seems to be cutting loose as well. All of this is very good, but to make everything even better, Nathan sends her a text message inviting her and her children over to his daughter's birthday party. Before heading out, Abigail finds herself acting goofy again, but anxiety hits when she finally sees his brother coming over to say hello. His son Dylan is standing alongside him, while his wife and daughter are standing behind him. The introductions are as fine as they come. The conversations are hard to maintain, but the most important step has already been taken, so the real firm embrace can finally happen.